This is a real-life incident that happened at a Korean school for the deaf in 2000. The mentally handicapped boy was brutalized by the homeroom teacher on a daily basis. The teacher would take him and his brother home after school to molest them. The principal raped the little girl like an animal. A school for the deaf is like hell on earth, boys and girls alike. From the age of 5 to 20, they were all tortured. Day after day, year after year, the children were already numb. Their young bodies are subjected to unspeakable humiliation. Their young minds were devastated. Luckily, a teacher later revealed the darkness of the school. Otherwise, the secret would never have been known. It was Junho's first day at the school for the deaf. When he entered the school, he greeted the students warmly. But strangely, the students were very indifferent. They even grabbed the student next to them and ran away. It seems that they don't welcome the new teacher. Then Junho went to the principal's office because he was recommended by his connections, so the principal was very nice to him. He even called the vice principal to familiarize him with the environment. What he didn't realize was that the principal and vice principal were twins. The vice principal took the initiative to bring Yeon-ho to the classroom door. He didn't say a word, but just held up 5 fingers. At first, Junho thought it was his way of welcoming him. He went up and gave him a high five, but the headmaster immediately changed his face. He said, "Are all the people from Seoul so stupid?" It turns out the 5 fingers meant 50 million won. On the surface, it's the school's development fund, but he was actually paying for the position. Yeon-ho had no choice but to contact his mother for the money. His wife passed away a long time ago. He has a daughter with congenital asthma. Now that he's finally found a job, he didn't want to waste this opportunity. On the day Junho started teaching, he taught his students how to draw with 4 apples. At the same time, 3 students caught his attention. First was this girl, Yeon-hee. She had a great talent for drawing, but she's indifferent to compliments. And then there's her classmate. This girl doesn't look very smart. She even ate the apple used for teaching. And lastly, there's this boy, Ming, who was late with a scarred face. I learned it from the class teacher. Ming's brother died 2 days ago. He's been in a bad mood lately, so he's been late a lot. The teacher didn't say anything about the bruises on his face. Junho didn't ask too many questions, but at night, he went through Ming's file. I found out that he had a very poor background. His father was mentally retarded. His mom disappeared after giving birth to his brother. His broken family was supported by his elderly grandmother. Then he looked at Yanji's file. Her parents died in a car accident. She's deaf due to her injuries, and her classmate, Yayu, had an IQ of 5 years old. Yeon-ho felt sad for these students. At the end of his shift, he suddenly heard screams. He followed the sound and found the girls' restroom. But just as Junho was about to open the door, he was stopped by a security guard. He said he was new here and didn't understand the situation. The kids here often make strange noises. The guard said that Junho could only leave at that moment. He didn't realize how close he was to the darkness. The next day, Junho brought the cash to the principal's office. To his surprise, the police were there. At first, Yeon-ho was hesitant, but in front of the police, the principal claimed that the development fund was legal. Then he took the money. When Yeon-ho returned to the office, he found the homeroom teacher beating up Ming. He instinctively went to stop him, but he kept slapping the boy. In the face of such brutality, the other teachers in the office did nothing. They seemed to be used to it. The teacher was tired of the beatings and complained. Yesterday, Ming ran out of school with 2 girls. He didn't sleep well all night. This reason is too far-fetched. Looking at Ming's blooded face, Junho didn't know what to say. After all, he's just started and can't afford to offend these people. On his way home from work, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. Rue was sitting alone on the dormitory window. Yeon-ho rushed upstairs and grabbed her. The sudden physical contact made Rue very nervous. He apologized in sign language and was about to leave, but Aju grabbed him by the hand. She took him all the way to the laundry room in the basement. At that moment, Ayo suddenly let go and ran away. When he arrived at the laundry room, he was surprised to find the dormitory manager torturing a student, Yeon-hee. Yeon-ho asked her why she was doing it, but she replied that she's in charge of the after-school hours. She warned him to mind his own business. He had no choice but to tell her that he had a fellow prosecutor. He said he had a prosecutor in his class. He looked at her and saw that she had fainted on the ground. Yeon-ho rushed her to the hospital. He called his friend Soo-ri, who works at the Human Rights Center, and he went to the principal's office. But on the surface, they were very concerned about her injury. But they had other plans. They said they'd be strict with the dormitory manager. Then they asked where she was hospitalized, and they said the school would pay for her hospitalization. The innocent Junho took the principal's words seriously. On his way back, Soo-ri called. She asked him to discuss about her. From Soo-ri, Yeonho learned a shocking secret. It turns out that she wasn't just beaten up. She was often assaulted by the principal. Not only her, but many of her classmates as well. In addition to the principal's brothers, there were many other teachers. Among them, the homeroom teacher was the most perverted. He used to bring her home to torture her, and the kids tried to call the police. But the police were working with the principal. When they heard that, Yeonho suddenly remembered that he had exposed the location of Hae Un-hee. When they returned to the hospital, the room was empty. Just as they were about to go out to look for her, Suri suddenly heard crying in the closet. It turns out that she hid in the closet before the principal came. That's how she survived. Now she's seen the ugliness of the school. Yeonho brought both Yen-hee and Roo to the Human Rights Center. They set up a video camera. They asked her to describe how she was violated, so that she could use it as evidence to report the principal, and in front of the camera, she started to use sign language to tell the story. When she went to the bathroom that night, the principal beckoned and dragged her into the office. He forced her to watch an indecent scene. He then slipped his hand into her clothes without fear of repercussions. She pushed him away in fear. She fled into the restroom in a panic. She prayed to the principal to let her go, but suddenly the light was turned on. She covered her mouth and didn't dare to make a sound. Until she saw the shoes disappear, she was relieved. But then the principal poked his head out from next door. She resisted the principal's behavior, but she was beaten severely at that time. Yeonho was in front of the restroom. He was just one door away from her. Unfortunately, he was tricked by the security guard. While Junho was feeling remorseful, Ju suddenly started crying. She also remembered that she was assaulted. When she saw that, she testified she saw it with her own eyes. She was discovered by the principal, and the principal warned her with a gesture. He warned her that if she dared to tell the truth, he would wipe her neck. Suvi couldn't stand it any longer. The next day, she took the video to the Education Bureau. She wanted to make sure the principal and others were properly punished. But I didn't expect the leaders of the Education Bureau to say, after-school students are not under their jurisdiction. Violations occurring after school belong to the City Hall. Suri was furious because she came from the City Hall. Suri had no choice but to go to the police. But the police had already been bribed by the principal. No matter what she said, they wouldn't open a case. When she was in despair, a colleague suddenly called and said that Seoul TV had learned about the incident, and they were willing to help them expose the principal's crimes. This instantly gave Suri hope. On the other hand, the principal's classroom teacher kept slapping Ming. Every slap was as hard as she could. The principal was sitting on the sofa quietly reading the newspaper. Deaf and mute, Ming couldn't cry out but only moaned in pain. The homeroom teacher asked him where Yeon-hee and Ah-yo were. Seeing Ming's silence, he picked up a golf club. The principal advised him to go easy on him. Don't dirty his office. So the homeroom teacher was about to take Ming out. But Junho stood in the doorway with a pot of monarchs. His mother had asked him to give it to the principal as a gift. She reminded him to be on good terms with the principal. His mother sold her house for this job, and her granddaughter has asthma. They desperately need a job like this to make ends meet. When he learned of their atrocities, Junho tried to restrain himself. For the sake of his family, he didn't want to get involved. But as he watched Ming being taken away by the class teacher, he didn't know what would happen to him. The principal was used to it. The vice principal waved him into his office. Junho's heart struggled. The orchid in his hand became heavier and heavier. As the stones fell from the pot, he couldn't restrain his anger any longer. He smashed the flower pot on the head of the homeroom teacher. Even if he lost his job, or even more serious consequences, as long as the child can be saved from suffering, it's worth the price. I can't be a part of these animals. Then Yeonho took Ming to the TV station in front of the camera. Ming told the story of how he was abused. He couldn't remember how many times he was beaten by his homeroom teacher, but he remembers one night. He and his brother were taken home by the homeroom teacher to take a shower. The homeroom teacher kept looking at his brother in a lewd manner. Ming tried to stop him, but he was kicked out of the shower. Then he was beaten again. He soon fainted from the pain. When he woke up, his brother was gone. He wanted to go out to look for him, but he was dragged back inside by his class teacher. He began an unspeakable act. The next day, his brother's body was found. Everyone said his brother had committed suicide on the railroad, but Ming knew that the homeroom teacher was to blame. Soon after, the children's story was exposed by the media. The police were pressured by public opinion. They had to take action to arrest the principal and others. Halfway through the arrest, a policeman who had been working with the principal warned him. The pressure of public opinion was too great. He told them to use all their resources to get themselves off the hook. On the day of the trial, a large number of people gathered in front of the courtroom. They were all protesting for the principal. When Yeonho passed by with his 3 children, they were shouting insults at the top of their voices. It's a good thing the kids couldn't hear. Otherwise, I don't know how cold they would have felt. The principal was the first to speak up in court as the defendant. He's just trying to defend himself. He claimed that he had helped many disabled children. He also does a lot of charity work. It's ridiculous to say that he abused the children. And then the school security guard came forward to testify. He said that in his 5 years of service, he patrolled the school every night. He never found anything like this. The gynecologist also examined the girl's body. Yayu is no longer a virgin, but that doesn't mean it's the result of an assault. It could be due to sports or other problems. The plaintiff's lawyer immediately questioned the gynecologist. Why did you write the analysis report twice? According to the first report, Yayu's assault was not recent. It was at least 5 years ago. Why are you now saying that it wasn't due to the assault? The doctor was stumped. The defense lawyer rushed to help. He said 5 years ago. Rue was only 9 years old. It's impossible to have sex with an adult. Unless he was willing to cooperate. The scene was abuzz with excitement. They accused the school's lawyer of being an animal. When asked who assaulted Rue, she pointed out all three when asked how many times. Yeah, you couldn't help but count her fingers after carefully remembering. She clenched her fists and made a pained sound. It was many times because since the 3rd grade, the principal and his men had been violating her. In order to prevent her from resisting, they would tie her up with duct tape every time. Afterwards, the animals would give her some snacks. When she recalled that tragic experience, Yayu was so scared that she became incontinent on the spot. The trial was over. The situation was getting worse. The principal sent someone to talk to the parents privately. At that time, the law in Korea stipulated that even if a child was violated, as long as the guardian reconciles, all previous testimonies would be invalidated. And the Jew's parents are both mentally retarded. They didn't know how dangerous the human heart is. Ziming's family is run by his elderly grandmother. It's hard to resist coercion. If the two families reach a settlement, that leaves the orphan child, Yeon-hee. They're worried. Then Yeon-ho's phone suddenly rang. It's an invitation to dinner from his mentor from college. He rushes to the dinner happily. To his surprise, a lawyer from the university was there. He explains why he's there. He hoped that Yeon-ho would do him a favor. The lawyer brought a box. Inside was the cash he'd bribed the school with. Now, the lawyer put an extra amount in it. He wants him to stay out of this. He even promised him a better job. Junho couldn't believe that the teacher he used to respect the most. Just as he turned to leave, the lawyer suddenly stopped him and told him that his daughter was in serious condition and needed money for treatment. After a moment of silence, Yeon-ho chose to leave. He hated his own incompetence. He hated the evils of the world. He punched the car window to vent his anger. The next day, before the trial began, his mother came to the court to find Yeon-ho. She accused him of not working hard to earn money. She didn't even care about her sick daughter. Instead, she cared about someone else's child. Yeon-ho told her that he was there when the child was victimized, but he couldn't do anything about it. If he gives up now, he doesn't have the confidence to be a father to his daughter. At the trial, the attorney deliberately asked her, how did she know that the person who committed the assault was the principal? She looked at the two identical animals. If she recognizes the principal, she get away with it. She came in front of them. She made a gesture of wiping their necks. That's what the principal had threatened her with. Looking at their reaction, she pointed at the principal firmly. Seeing that the situation is getting more and more unfavorable, the defense attorney can only resort to the last resort. Because of her testimony, she ran to the principal's office when she heard a cry for help. And then she saw the scene of Rue being assaulted. But how could a deaf and mute person hear the sound? To confirm this, they put a music box behind her. Raise your hand if she can hear the music. As the lawyer pressed the switch, Yeon-hee really raised her hand slowly. When the lawyer turned off the music, she lowered her hand again. Then the lawyers did it again several times, and she responded accurately. Finally, the judge accepted her testimony and set the next court date for Friday. The crowd in favor of her cheered. They finally saw the hope of victory. On the other hand, Suri came to Ziming's house. She wanted to persuade her grandmother not to agree to the settlement, but it turned out to be too late. The dormitory manager had already reached an agreement with the old man. Looking at the old man's lonely back, Shuli finally chose to understand. In the evening, Ming took out a page of his testimony. He told Mr. Yeon-ho to testify in court as well. Then he practiced sign language, facing his expectant eyes. Yeon-ho told him about his grandmother's settlement. When Ming heard it, he looked incredulous. He kept gesturing. Yeon-ho took him in his arms in pain. At night, Young-hee suddenly woke Yeon-ho up because she remembered one more detail, the video that the principal let her watch that night. The man in the video seemed to be the principal himself. If she could get the video, it would be the best evidence for the court. So Yeon-ho and Suri sneaked into the principal's office, and they found a camera inside. After searching for it, they found a video of the principal recording the crime. Looking at the date in the video, they were very happy, because the girl was under 13 years old on the day she was victimized. According to the law, even if they reach a settlement, they'll still be punished. With such solid evidence, they are secretly happy they'll be able to bring these animals to justice. But their lawyer said, this kind of indecent video can't be shown in court. He would give the video to the judge in private. Soon the day of the final trial arrived. Yeon-ho arrived at the court early. He stared at the words liberty, equality, and justice on the front door. He stared at it for a long time, because he had waited so long for this day. But this time, there was no trial. The judge went straight to the verdict. The crowd looked at the judge with anticipation. Instead, the judge talked about the principal's charity. He also emphasized that they had no previous criminal record. The judge sentenced them to 8 months in prison and 2 years probation. The courtroom was abuzz after the sentence was pronounced. It turns out that this was all just a show from the beginning. The lawyers, judges, and witnesses were all from the principal, even the lawyer who defended the kids. Afterwards, the principal and his men were drinking at the opera house. The lawyer kept bragging about how he won the case. On the other hand, Yeon-ho and Suri found out from Yeon-hee. Seung-min had gone to his homeroom teacher to seek revenge. Since justice can't be served, he'll have to settle the matter on his own. Ming waited for the homeroom teacher on his way home. When he saw him, he went straight up and stabbed him. Then he pressed him against the railroad tracks as hard as he could. The train went by quickly by the time Jun-ho found the place. All that was left was blood and a shoe. Ming's memorial hall was set up across the street from the courthouse. The deaf and mute people were sitting outside, even with heavily armed police in front of them. They didn't move with their protest signs. Even when they saw the judge's car, they threw eggs at the judge's car. To vent their frustration and anger, the police used high-pressure water cannons to drive them away. In the chaos, Yeon-ho came out holding Ming's portrait. All he can do now is to let the world see him. Jun-ho cries as he walks. His heart was filled with resentment. Even though he was knocked down by the water gun again and again, he tried to stand up, until he lost all his strength, until Ming's remains were crushed, until the crowd left, until they were all taken to the police station. This is the end of the movie. I'm sorry to say that the story ends so cruelly. We didn't see the so-called justice, as much warmth and kindness is exposed in the sunshine, and so much coldness, the evil hidden in the shadows. This movie is based on the novel of the same name, The Melting Pot. 6 days after the movie was released, the police set up a task force to reinvestigate the case. On the 37th day after the movie's release, the National Assembly of Korea, with 208 members present, the amendment to the Sexual Violence Crime Act was passed unanimously. It's the melting pot law that changed the country with the movie. It stipulates that those who violate the vulnerable can be sentenced to life imprisonment. Movies that advance human civilization like this, that's the true meaning of a good movie.